From Sharp Healthcare, Lynn Skoczelas. First, some supporters to thank, and thank you for listening. This episode is supported by CCW Digital, leaders responsible for operations, information technology, contact centers, customer care, service, and support are invited to register for a free CCW Digital membership. Membership includes networking with 100,000 plus qualified industry professionals, quarterly executive research reports, product matchmaking, and more. Go to ccwdigital.com to join the community. This episode is also supported by the CCW Conference and Expo. The event will empower you to test, learn, and try the next big thing in customer experience optimization. Are you interested in mining data across touch points for personalized and predictive data? Are you trying to integrate your systems to get a more complete view of the customer? Are you figuring out what innovations to invest in? Chatbots, virtual assistants, AI, VR, biometrics, to name a few? Go to callcenterweek.com to register. Once a nurse, always a nurse. Lynn Skoczelas joins us and shares that the Chief Experience Officer title is new and that executives across the board should fully understand the value of experience versus service. Service is being nice and following protocol, but to create a memorable experience is quite another thing. Lynn says that we are all continually creating memories, and the question is, are they positive or are they negative? So the goal is to have the patient walk away from a serious healthcare experience with the most prominent memory being positive. Lynn says to make that happen, experience thinking must be prevalent throughout the entire organization. Welcome to CCW Digital on B2B IQ. I'm your host, Seth Adler. Download episodes on ccwdigital.com or through our app in iTunes within the iTunes podcast app in Google Play or wherever you currently get your podcasts. Lynn Skoczelas. Lynn, thank you so much for doing this.
It's my pleasure.
It's a busy day for you. We'll leave it at that.
All right.
Right? But CXO, what do you think your fellow Chief Experience Officers don't understand?
Wow. That's a loaded question.
Sure.
What do I think they don't understand? You know, I think that Chief Experience Officers across the board, it's a very new field, very new title. Mm-hmm. And I think that they might not fully understand the value of experience versus service.
And how do you mean?
So, you know, service is, I can be nice to you. I can, follow all of the, protocol of minding my P's and Q's, if you will.
Right.
But to create an experience where you remember that experience above everything else. Mm-hmm. So I guess one of the things that we talk about a lot is that we are all continually creating memories.
Sure.
Are they positive? Are they negative? So in healthcare, there's a lot of memories that we would prefer not to have. Mm-hmm. But when you can walk away from a healthcare experience and say, what I remember is that person who held my hand, who sat down and put their hand on my shoulder, mm-hmm. who gave me a loaf of banana bread when I left the hospital, or, brought me juice on a silver tray.
Right.
I remember that more than I remember anything else.
Sure.
That's the piece that makes the difference.
So my mom was sick for 3 years, and we really got very into the healthcare system. And what you're describing are those very personal experiences that you have with usually nurses, not doctors, different conversation. How do you, as the Chief Experience Officer, kind of all the way up there, affect what's happening all the way down here with my thank you very much for the pineapple juice, not the orange juice type of thing?
One of the things that I'm fortunate to be in is in an organization that has valued the experience for so long mm-hmm. that there's so many mini-me's all over the organization. Everybody says, well, you just must have so much work cut out for you. If I can influence the leaders at the top mm-hmm. and use our leaders to drive that knowledge to all of our employees, then I feel like I've done my job and I've introduced ways for every single employee to bring their very best to their work and to be creative and to serve from the heart.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, no, that is what makes the difference. And as far as mini-me's, you mentioned that this is a new space and a new title, but you've had this for 5 years.
Right.
So it's not new for you.
It's not new for me. So what I've noticed in the industry, particularly in healthcare, is that right now there's a big push to have, the experience officer, whether you call them director of patient experience, or you call them whatever the title may be. The difference in our organization is that we're not looking at any one facet of the experience. We're not looking at just the patient experience. We're looking at the employee, the physician, and the patient experience. And the difference is when you start with the people within the organization and you allow them to be the architects of what they believe to be the culture and the right thing, there's so much creativity and innovation that is harnessed that you just can't help but be successful. But when you focus on just one of those three and you say, well, I'm the director of patient experience, you're missing so much more.
Literally 2/3 of it.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the university. Can you just take us through kind of the big tent poles of how that was set up? And you're mentioning what the goal was here already. Where was the magic there?
So the vision was to create a way to give our leaders the tools that they needed to do their job. And the goal was to bring them together quarterly and give them a full day of learning. And in doing so, to send them out to then educate everyone with their knowledge all the way to the front line. And then for us to have feedback from that in order to know that that had been accomplished. Okay, so that's a piece of it.
Right.
Now, there's a couple of things I want to say. The first one is we made that commitment in 2001. We have not stepped away from it. So organizations... I was just asked recently when I was presenting to an organization, their chief experience officer said, well, what do you do when funds get tight and, the first thing to go is the training and education? And I said, well, we made a commitment to it, and the good news is that our organization believes in it, and we see the difference it has made over time, and we have stayed very true to it. And so looking at that model, looking at the model, and I'm getting a little bit away from your question, but looking at that model and what the focus was, the focus in 2001, the focus is still today. There's quarterly leadership training sessions. We just celebrated our 50th session.
Unbelievable.
That means, since 2001, that means that we have come together for 2 days every quarter since 2001 for 50 sessions. So we take half of our leaders off, because we still have a business to run.
Sure, yeah.
And we give them this full day of education, but it's also in keeping them fully abreast of what's going on in the organization, treating them in a way that gives them the knowledge to run the business.
Sure. So 50, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
That's quite
Thank
an
you.
accomplishment. You mentioned two things that always come up. Okay, well, what about the funding? Yes, okay, we've got the buy-in at the top. Next thing is the people themselves. So you've got, management bought in. Here we go. Half of you have to stay doing what you're doing. Half of you come on in, have a Danish, and let's go. What about, connecting the dots from that leadership team to the middle management team, which has so much on their desks, right? I'm being measured on this, I'm being measured on that, and then now you want me to do this too?
Great question. Okay, so when you think about this, first of all, let me start with leaders in our organization. There's 1,800 leaders, and who is considered a leader in the organization? I think that's where you start. Everyone in our organization, from a supervisor up to a CEO, is a leader. So if you have one report or you have 200 reports, you are a leader. That means you're at the table. That means you get the information. How do we connect that back to everyone else in the organization? We have what's called accountability grids. And what an accountability grid is a homework assignment, if you will. It's not, you just don't come for a day of edutainment. You take this home and you do something with it. And so we put forward what you need to do with this knowledge that you have just been given, whether that's to have conversations with your team, whether that's to hold a special meeting, whatever it is, to roll out employee opinion survey information. So there's an active role in doing it. We also then take all of the information that has been provided over that those 2 days, and we put the resources online. Now, we don't hold sessions so that you can go and make that up, because we're not trying to encourage you to do it at your leisure, but to come and hear it firsthand. Additionally, what happens in that meeting is that you get this sort of desire to want to go and do something, because you're hearing about everything in the organization, what's happening, how it's affecting you, how it's affecting your people, and you're hearing that from our CEO. So our CEO is going through our report card, and our report card, those performance targets are aligned with our what we call our 7 pillars of excellence, and those 7 pillars of excellence are the structure that aligns everything in the organization. So it all makes sense to our leaders, and it all clicks, and it all flows from the top to the front. So out of 19,000 employees, 19,000 employees, we have 1,800 leaders.
There you go.
So 10% of the organization is in the room on one of those 2 days.
A full 10%.
A full 10%. And we have, and I'm proud to say that our leaders take it very seriously, and we just actually interviewed a few of our leaders for the 50th to say, you know, what has this meant to you? And I heard comments from, it's like a mini MBA to it, you know, it gives me the ability to lead the way I want to lead, and to really create the experience for employees, physicians, and patients that I believe in and that I'm passionate about.
Your job title is Chief Experience Officer, right?
Yes.
We left off the customer because that's only 1/3 of it, right?
Correct.
So you've got your CEO, who you mentioned, who obviously is bought into this. You know,
he's more than bought into it. He leads it.
There you go.
There
and you report to him, I would imagine.
I do.
Right? What would advice be for other folks that are, you know, your colleagues that are here and listening, who really do want to do this, obviously? How important is it to take that customer name off of it, to have that, you know, Chief Experience Officer be the title, to have that person report directly to the CEO as opposed to someone else?
Great question. So it's uber important. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but there's nothing more important. If you're not connecting in with the people of the organization, they will never deliver the experience that you want for your customers.
Right.
So if you are just focused on your customers, you're losing it. You're losing it. And how important is it to report to the CEO? I think it's very important to report to the CEO. I think that having the support and the ear of the CEO in the measures that are changing or supporting or designing the culture of an organization, without that,
what are you doing?
Lost.
Right.
You're lost.
So you mentioned the 7 pillars, and you're measuring everything on those 7 pillars. What about the bottom line? What about me and my organization? My CFO, he's like, what? Or she says, what are you doing here with that? I have no idea how this is impacting our bottom line. I cannot see this.
So it's a great question. This morning I shared with a group really what has been the outcome of our work since 2001.
Okay.
And I will tell you that net revenue's up, bond ratings are up, philanthropic support is up, and there's nothing that would account for it other than the journey that we have been on.
How can you say that, if I may, Lynn, right? May I press you there?
You may press me all you want on that one, because we look at the organization and we look at what's different in the organization, and we also trend all of the measurements. We trend patient, employee, and physician satisfaction. We trend retention and turnover, and we trend, all of our finances, and we actually, watch how those are performing over the course of those 16, 17 years. And there's truly nothing that accounts for it. And I have to say, our CFO, and we're very fortunate there, has been a keen member of the group of model developers and the people who actually believed in this work. And, you know, I guess in her words, she said, you can just feel it in the culture. You can, she said, when the CFO walks down the hall and people run up and hug her and talk to her, she said she knows that something right is going on in the organization. But, you know, can I sit here and tell you that, you know, we've tied this measure to this measure? I can't, but we knew that our 7 pillars, quality, safety, service, people, finance, and growth and community, if we focused on quality, safety, service, and people, finance and growth come along.
Right.
They come along for the ride.
They become lagging indicators if you allow the others to become leading indicators.
You know what? I think I would totally agree with that.
All right, so you've got the 5 years as the Chief Experience Officer. You've been with the organization for longer than that, is what we can say.
Correct.
What did you dabble in prior to being appointed?
Oh, so my background is nursing, and I have been in women's. I've served as a leader in women's services, probably in every area possible. I actually believe that that's where the customer experience began. If you think back to baby boomers, when the baby boomers began having children back in the 70s and 80s, and those women were demanding an experience. I want a birthing bed, and I want a birthing room, and I think maybe I'd rather birth at home. Those are the people that have come up through the ages and have raised children who also want those same types of experiences, because that's what those moms and dads did back then. So I feel like I'm sort of a natural for it, and have sort of been in it since that time. I've worked, as I said, in women's health. I came into Sharp 20 years ago as a clinical leader before the Sharp experience, so I can tell you what it felt like to work at Sharp before that. We were a good organization. That's what we were good, but we wanted to be great. We wanted to be we wanted to differentiate ourselves and really create a brand promise.
Where did that come from, though, right? If we were good, but we wanted to be great, was that maybe the new CEO coming in?
It was the new CEO coming in, and it was the book Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Really?
Yes. So in reading the book Good to Great, Mike wanted his team to read it, and, you know, Jim Collins makes a great point that, you know, we become complacent once we become good, and oftentimes, you know, don't make that extra step to become great. And so it was really sort of a natural progression from there that we decided to listen to the people of Sharp Healthcare, and we created focus groups, and we said, tell us about your Sharp experience, and they did. And they said, well, you know what? It wasn't what they wanted, that healthcare needed to be transformed, and that there was nothing that differentiated us from our competitors. And so it became the natural thing to do, to actually begin to do an investigational study inside and outside of healthcare, particularly outside, because we'd just been told that healthcare in general wasn't that great.
Right.
And so
we're not going to benchmark against that.
Exactly. Because you know what? It's not about the experiences in healthcare anyway that we compare healthcare to. We compare it to every other experience we have. We compare it to the experience we have at Disney. We compare it, you know, people often say, well, if they can do it on a cruise ship, if they can do it, you know, here, there, or wherever, you should be able to do it in healthcare. And it's like, you're right, exactly. You know what? It works. It works.
So to that end, right, as a nurse, right, which you are and will always be.
Correct.
Right, and me as a patient, which no matter if I have something ailing me, I am and will always be. Right. What advice does the nurse have to all of the patients listening as far as the way that we should be looking at life, the way that we should be looking at work, the way that we should be looking at this whole thing that we're doing?
You know what? I think as a patient, I think the biggest thing is to tell your care provider what you need and want, and do it up front, and let them help you. Because if you can create a relationship with your care provider, you will have a better experience. It's probably just the other side of what, as care providers, we try to do, and that's to build a little trust and rapport with our patients, so that the patients trust us, and so that we can have a good dialogue and really help patients get well. I mean, that's really what we went into healthcare for, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so if I can reduce your anxiety and get you to trust me, and we have an open, honest discussion, you're more free with me and give me all that history and all that information I need, and then I can help you get better.
Yeah.
It's a mutual respect kind of dance.
Sure. So, not getting into politics, but bringing up the fact that that's obviously part of our national conversation now. How do you kind of leave that alone or accept the indicators as they're, given to you so that you can simply keep doing your job, providing great health care to me, the patient? How do we deal with all this?
It's an interesting question. The political climate, and it's not just in this administration, but previous administrations, healthcare has continually been asked to do more with less.
Right.
And I think that's where you have to hand it to those who go into healthcare. They perform miracles. They're innovative people. They lead from the heart. They're passionate about what they do, and we find ways. But it is getting much, much, much more difficult to continually be asked to do more with less.
Yeah, but you do sound like a nurse when you answer that question. It's like, well, the patient's here. It doesn't even matter what my resources are. I'm going to solve the problem no matter what it is, right?
Yeah. Ask a nurse to solve a problem and she will.
Absolutely.
Or he will.
Okay, there you go,
Okay,
right? Exactly.
Okay, absolutely.
With our female CFOs and our male nurses, right?
Exactly. I think I went to school with 2 male nurses, and now today I think the classes are probably equally split.
Yeah,
it's
there
great.
you go.
It's great.
So 3 final questions. I'll tell you what
Okay.
they are, and then I'll ask you them in order.
Okay.
What has most surprised you at work along the way, your entire career? What has most surprised you in life? And then that means all of it. And then on the soundtrack of your life, Lynn, this is how we're going to end. 1 track, 1 song that's got to be on there. But we'll get to that in a minute. What's most surprised you at work?
I think what surprised me most at work is the passion that our CEO has.
But also CFO, getting hugs,
yes,
right? I mean, come on.
Yes, but the passion that he has for people, the passion that he has for the work that we do, that never-ending embraceability of everything. I don't know, embraceability, is that really a word?
Yeah, we'll go with it.
We'll go with it. Okay.
Absolutely.
I have such admiration for not just the CEO, but the executive team. That I guess that's what's surprising. Probably what's most surprising is that every organization isn't able to do this. We give all of the information to organizations, and you know what? Mike always says, Mike's our CEO.
Yeah.
It's the people of Sharp Healthcare that make a difference. And you know what? He's right. And so I guess what surprises me is that all the right people are in the right place at the right time.
There you go. So you're kind of lucky to be there. It sounds like you're saying.
You know what? I feel so fortunate. I can't even begin to tell you.
Yeah. What's most surprised you in life?
Oh, my gosh. What's most surprised me in life? That's a tough question.
Well, it's the biggest question, we like to think.
Yeah, it's the biggest question. What surprised me in life? I guess that I'm sitting here today as the CXO of Sharp Healthcare. That has surprised me most. I left college after 2 years and got married and had to go back to, not had to, but chose to go back to school 3 different times in my life while raising children and, dealing with a husband who was traveling. But I was driven to become a nurse and to just continue to be able to do some great things. And doors have opened for me. And so I guess, I don't know, surprising. I'm a fortunate lady.
Right. And you're maybe a little resilient as well, right?
Yeah, there might be a little resiliency along
maybe
the way.
a touch tenacious, perhaps.
Oh, tenacious, that's my favorite word.
There you go.
Absolutely.
That's it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so soundtrack of your life. 1 track, 1 song that's got to be on there.
My mind went in so many different ways, but when you just made that last comment, I am woman, hear me roar.
There you go. Lynn, thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure.
Here's to the nurses.
Thank you.
And here's to your family.
Thanks so much.
All right. And there you have Lynn Skoczelas. If you're not connecting with the people in your organization, they will never deliver the experience that you want for your customers. That is so true. Thank you very much to Lynn for her time. Thank you very much to you for yours. Stay tuned.